I'm Ciaran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. In this episode, we're joined by Dr. Philip Creighton to discuss some of the key factors to consider for fertiliser application this spring. With both environmental and economic considerations, Philip outlines the importance of waiting until soil temperatures and ground conditions are suitable before applying fertiliser at the moment. We discussed the option for farmers looking at split applications this spring, how much to spread, where to target, and why lower covers may be better suited to farmyard manure or slurry applications. Philip also highlights the importance of soil fertility in terms of the responsiveness of swards to spring nitrogen as well as the impact of perennial ryegrass content. Philip talks about the fertiliser choice for the first round of and subsequent round of applications and the need to match demand as we progress through March into early April. We start off, however, with Philip discussing some of the challenges this spring and the delay in fertiliser application that we've seen on many farms.
I suppose so far this year, Ciaran, it's been quite challenging from a grass growth point of view and from a point of view of getting any fertiliser applied. We've had a prolonged cold spell followed by a prolonged wet spell. Neither of those scenarios are suitable for grass growth in that the soil temperature was well below optimal. And then we were dealing with soils which were basically waterlogged in many places, which again does not allow for significant grass growth and are also not suitable conditions for the application of nitrogen. So
that's been pretty much the picture right around the country. Like we've seen a number of the better farms in the same scenario. Various farms up length and breadth of the country this year. It just has been quite a difficult start. I think even up until recently, their soil temperature was still below that kind of magic 6 degree figure.
Yeah, like it's really only in the last week or 10 days that the soil temperatures have come back over that 6 degrees in most places. And we've kind of seen that, where grass was, that kind of a yellow dead look about it. It has started to improve in the last week or so, but the problem in the last week or 10 days has been that we've had very significant falls of rain right across the country, which was leading to waterlogged soils basically, which number one, we can't travel, and number two, even if we could travel, the risk of nitrate leaching is very high. So it's just not. It hasn't been possible. Certainly, we haven't spread any nitrogen, nothing right to date. We're going to have to just wait for, as I say, at the moment, the soil temperatures are probably okay. Our soil temperatures are kind of 6.5 to 7 degrees, so that's fine. It's the soil conditions and the level of rainfall is the issue.
And just like for a quick recap, but that 6 degrees, it's important because, in your own words, maybe that's when growth is kicking off, essentially.
Yeah, so like the grass plant needs that 6 degrees basically to initiate growth again, and if it's below that, it's just not actively growing.
I suppose, Philip, like the other challenge, like the ground conditions, apart from obvious trafficking issues, it's probably holding back the soil temperature slightly. It's certainly not helping the nutrients that are in the ground, but it's good for a lot of the country. It's going to take a long time to dry, and we may need to consider splitting applications. We'll talk about that in a moment or two, but the other risk at the moment, with a couple of more weather warnings this even coming in this week, getting that spell of dry weather, at least get maybe a day, 2 days, 3 days dry weather after we spread it, certainly with them heavy rainfalls forecast, is something else you need to put on your radar.
Yeah, so at the moment, I suppose what we're waiting for is enough dry weather to actually dry out the land. But certainly then we do need to see that there is no heavy rain forecast in the immediate future after application as well. So we need dry weather to get to the point where it's suitable to apply, and then we need dry weather afterwards to ensure that there is no risk of runoff or leaching in the aftermath of the application.
Just in terms of where to go or where to apply, look, we mentioned there about going for the drier fields. I think given the current conditions and where we are in the time of year we're at, lambing's going to start, we're going to get busy. There is probably an argument this year for splitting applications, certainly targeting the drier fields first on most farms, and maybe it could be a case that we have to go mid-March with a second application, which mightn't necessarily be the worst thing either on the wetter areas.
Yeah, so definitely it's a case now of we're going to have to get out and walk the farm. And as you say, some areas of the farm may become suitable quicker than others. And given where we are now, grass covers are tighter on some farms than normal. So it's about taking any opportunity we can. So it may be a case that rather than blanket spreading the entire farm, we select out the areas that are suitable, and then come back to the other areas at a later date.
Just in terms of grass cover, like that's another consideration to have there as well. What would you like to target in terms of having grass? What level of grass cover would you want for first round application?
Yeah, so that is a key consideration as well. So, the old saying, grass grows grass. Really, we need a cover of about 5 centimeters or more than 400 kilograms of grass trimer per hectare. Swards of that or above, which obviously have been actively growing or will be beginning to reawaken now, and will be in a position to take up fertilizer nitrogen that will be applied. Fields maybe with lower coverage of grass, probably it's a case of if there was slurry or farmyard manure, maybe that could be utilized, that could be applied to them, or give it a little bit longer for those fields. Possibly they're fields that a lower percentage of perennial ryegrass in them, possibly fields that have a soil fertility issue. If they haven't accumulated any grass over the winter period, if you've been following a closing plan or whatever and there's still no grass accumulated on them, there's probably a reason for that, and they're not the fields that are going to maybe respond quite so fast to early fertilizer. So they should probably be left off for now. So
in reality, there's probably double benefit there. You're getting the P's and K's into it as well, and it's also cleaner grazing. But the likelihood of a field at 3.5 centimeters come back into rotation, it'll be into April at that point. So it's giving you enough of a break between it anyway. Look, in terms of what to apply, this question frequently comes up. What's your recommendations at the moment in terms of choice of product and potentially as well, Philip, in terms of the quantity that you go out in that first round?
Yeah, and it's something that we're getting a lot of queries on at the moment. I suppose, given that it's been quite a delayed start to getting fertilizer out. There is some talk around, of spreading maybe a higher rate to try and make up for that. That's not something that we'd be recommending. This time of year, there is only a certain potential in the plant to grow. Obviously, it needs all of the key factors. It needs the heat, it needs the light, and it needs the nitrogen and the moisture, which certainly isn't limiting at the moment. But really, we're talking about not applying any more than 30 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, or about 24 units to the acre in any one application. And the reason for that is that over your next month or so, once soil temperatures are rising and continue to improve, the grass will have the potential to take up that amount of nitrogen over the next 30 to 40 days. And that's fine. If we go with higher levels than that, really it's not going to be possible for the grass plant to take up any more than that, and we're just basically increasing the risk of loss. And it's with the way prices are, it's just not economic, and it's not something that we could recommend. So in terms of rates, for farms that are stocked maybe at less than 10 euros per hectare, you're talking somewhere around 20 kilograms of nitrogen to the hectare, or around 17 units to 20 units per acre. Or for farms stocked higher than that, maybe up to 12 euros per hectare, you're talking about your 30 units, or maybe up to 24, 25, or your 30 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, or your 24 to 25 units per acre.
I think it's something you've touched on nicely, that the fine balancing act at the moment in terms of the potential for the grass, and we know response rates increase as year goes on, but also the need at the moment to get grass growing. So there is that fine balancing act. And maybe it throws up the other point, particularly the year in, where we may be looking at split applications on the farm. The need maybe to come back in later on in March and top up ground that hasn't got any, or maybe consider when we go in with our second application on some of them earlier, more responsive higher percentage perennial or ryegrass fields. It's another option that really needs to be looked at, particularly the year we're in, Philip.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say yourself, the issue at the moment is that, on a lot of farms, maybe grass supplies are that little bit tighter, and that would make sense given the weather conditions really since Christmas. It's been one extreme, the other very cold or very wet, not good conditions for grass growth. And that is, a concern, that will we have enough grass for ewes in early lactation? Look, we are where we are, we'll do everything we can, but we have to do it responsibly, and also, from an economic point of view, we need to ensure that any money we spend on fertilizer we get a payback for that. But yes, that's the immediate concern, but the longer term concern would be that even if we can get things back on track for the early stages, nearly every year on most sheep farms, everyone will tell you that their tightest period for grass is that kind of late March, early April, when you've the majority of the sheep are lambed, intake is increasing every day. You could have lambs starting to graze a little bit, and you really have to be getting back out there with another application at that point, and it's probably the same again in terms of the application rate at that point, and that grows the grass then for the second round, the second rotation into April, and at that point then we should be in a position where we can make decisions around how much we need to go with in subsequent applications based on feed demand, and that'll be dictated by how much ground we need to close for silage or stocking rate, all those sort of things that have to be taken into account.
It is an important one because your demand is increasing up by both the individual demand on the ewes, but overall the number of ewes that will be lamb turned out, it's still going up at that point.
Exactly. So it's a key area to keep an eye on.
Just for those considering a compound application, because it's another frequent question we get asked, like, should we go out now and get our P's and K's out straight away, or should Philip they hold off on that potentially until the second round of fertilizer application in most grazing situations?
Yeah, it's a very important point too, I suppose, Ciaran. In terms of your compounds and your soil fertility, I suppose the first thing I would say is that for anyone that hasn't done a soil test recently, now is the ideal time before any fertilizer is going out, to take soil samples and to send them in for analysis. And if it's a case that you think there's deficiency somewhere, I would be leaning towards maybe putting some level of nitrogen out, getting your soil tests done, and maybe being able to go out then on your second rotation with a level of compound to target, more precisely what's needed. Any of this, we do need to highlight that, the response to nitrogen fertilizer applied, is optimized when soil fertility is optimized. And I suppose the reverse of that is that if there's any issues with soil fertility, low pH, low P, low K, the response to the nitrogen applied will be lower. And again, from an economic point of view and from an environmental point of view, we need to be doing everything we can to get the highest response from what we apply. So it will be an important one. Just in terms of generally, the compounds, yes, I suppose where there's a known deficiency, we can go with a compound. What I would suggest is that will be held to the second rotation or the second application. Two reasons for that. The majority of our compound fertilizers, if we need P and K, are still a can-based product. We are recommending to go with protected urea from an environmental point of view to reduce our impact. Urea fertilizer at this time of year, when there is the risk of wetter conditions, is more stable in the soil and less likely to leach compared to your can-based fertilizers. And also, applying significant amounts of K early on like this can trigger grass tetany. Now, small amounts are probably okay, and if that's required, fine. But it probably is the better option to delay that to the second application when the peak risk for grass tetany, is reducing.
Well, I think what Honey was seeing for the next couple of weeks, a few dry weeks, to see conditions change, certainly it'll be beneficial as we approach the start of lamb for the vast majority of flocks out there. Look, we'll catch up again with you in early April just for a bit more on grazing management and maybe a recap on where we are on some of these issues.
Thanks, Ciaran.
Okay, we'll finish things up at this point. Again, Philip highlighted a lot of the factors we need to consider when we're thinking about fertiliser application this spring. Certainly, conditions haven't been ideal thus far, and it's a bit of a waiting game, but I think the key thing there is have the fertiliser ready to go out, and when conditions allow, target the driest areas in your farm first where you're going to get your best response. And again, don't forget to go back in late March, early April, assess your covers and look at what follow-up options you have. That's it for me for this episode. Again, for any updates on the sheep program, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Ciaran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and listen back to any of our episodes.